Hey, welcome to the show. I am Sam, and today we are talking about BlackRock. I hate BlackRock. All my homies hate BlackRock, but we're going to talk about BlackRock and what they are doing in Texas right now. And I brought on somebody who knows a lot about this subject, Nancy White, and I will have her introduce herself in a second. But just so you can go over and check out her handle, she is Nancy, the number 4 thinking on X. And you'll get a lot of good content if you go over there and check her out. But without further ado, let's jump in, introduce Nancy. And Nancy, tell us about yourself.
First off, thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
A little bit about me. I run a business called Legislative Energy Action Foundation, where we focus on critical infrastructure with a hyper focus on the grid. I also run the Secure the Texas Grid Coalition, which is a subdivision of the National Coalition of Security of the Grid. So, grids are kind of my thing. I know a lot about them. And I also incidentally have a TV show called Overlooked Critical Matters on OBBM Network. So, that's a bit of
Nice.
my background.
Excellent. So Nancy knows what she's talking about. Very important when we talk about the grid in Texas, because for those of us who live in Texas and have been around a minute, we obviously have issues with our power grid. So it's a bit of a sore subject with us, especially if you lived through, what do they call that? Ice gate
Agree.
or whatever it was. We froze to death. Not quite to death, but it was a cold winter and everything shut down. So it was good
It
times.
was death.
But there absolutely was death. I'm going to bring up your tweet though, because this is what spurred this conversation. And I want you to break this down
Yes.
and tell us what we're looking at. So you tweeted this the other day, and just go through this really quick and tell us what's going on.
Right. So, what's currently happening is most people don't actually know that Texas actually has seven grids. We don't just have one. And one of those grids is the Texas New Mexico grid, which is what this is in relation to. There was actually a few bills and legislation this year that we had to stop from moving forward, or at least go and lobby against in this regard. But in this case, Blackstone is currently in the process of purchasing the Texas New Mexico grid. Now, the problem with this is most people don't know that BlackRock actually originated under Blackstone around 1988. So BlackRock actually started under Blackstone. And while they still claim that they're separate now, if you look at their yearly reports and their quarterly reports, they still push the ESG narrative, so that economic governance and social. And that's actually very concerning whenever you know that the Texas Attorney General here has a lawsuit against BlackRock for that very reason, where
Mm,
they were manipulating the grids and pushing solar and wind technology and offsetting coal and oil and gas because of them pushing this ESG narrative, which is actually the big reason our grid, ERCOT's grid, and the ones we have are so unstable because we
right.
have intermittent technology instead of ongoing consistent technology. So whenever that's just them being part of being on the board in general. So now if they own the entire grid, that raises some red flags about BlackRock or any connection to them owning an entire grid in Texas, especially when you know that Reagan stated that the reason Texas won the war, or the reason America won the war, was because the oil in Texas, and they're doing
Hmm.
away with that.
Yeah. I see this is a $11.5 billion deal.
Mhm.
Do you happen to have the numbers for how much property BlackRock has bought in Texas? I've seen the map.
BlackRock
It,
personally, no, but I do know for solar, wind, and batteries, it's approximately 3 million acres of land, and that's not including the transmissions.
okay. That's not good. And if you think about what's going on with, everybody loves to talk about Abbott and his ties to the World Economic Forum, but I mean this is literally what it is. These invitations that WEF has made to Abbott over the years and his involvement with them, and then bringing that into Texas, and then now what they're currently trying to do. I would love to say that this is something happening in the shadows and this is like some kind of conspiracy, but it's not. It's literally happening right in front of us. Talk about the actual hearing that was coming up to deal with this?
Well, real quick, I want to touch on what you just said because this is important. So, Abbott and World Economic Forum, 50 states, 50 governors, less than 10 of which are mentioned on the World Economic Forum website. Governor Abbott isn't just mentioned, he has his very own page on the World Economic Forum website. And I think
Lovely.
that that needs to clearly be stated because one of the primary investors at 97% into BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street is Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is a direct partner of the World Economic Forum, not a subsidiary, a partner.
Hmm.
That's important.
No, that's pretty important. We're not just talking about, a lot of folks have been tied to the WEF over the years, and it turns out that they were just folks that had either come in, they didn't really know what was going on. They were invited. WEF wasn't as known back in the day. They kind of distanced themselves over time, but Abbott, like you said, he has his own page. He is a big player, and he's a big part of their operations. And of course, now we see the direct results of that and what's going on here.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And
you
so what's
have,
happening is you brought up what are they doing? So when we put out this call to action, so we had our grid meeting for the state on Tuesday. And in discussing that, we're coming up on a deadline of Monday and Tuesday, the 15th and 16th. They were set to have a vote to allow this purchase. And what's happened is now we can state that we had so many people submit it that as of today they have pulled that meeting. They're not holding the meeting to vote. For the record, I know it's a screenshot on my phone. I get picked on my phone all the time. If you want, you can
yeah.
go look up if you go to that post on Facebook, you can click on the actual call to action. It tells you what this interchange number is, and you can go look up all the numbers and what's in there. But there's something else I want to put out. You see where they canceled it, but just above where they canceled it, the same day, the legal counsel of the Public Utility Commission fully supports the movement of this purchase. That's a problem for me too.
E Explain that more in depth. Say that again?
So, kind of like ERCOT has their head legal counsel, Public Utility Commission of Texas has their legal counsel.
Okay.
And so when we submit, on that call to action, we're putting in public opposition. So what you can't see just above this one is a letter that was submitted to the Public Utility Commission of opposition. So you can go through, there's over 217. So the 218th line was the final line when I was on earlier. And you can see all actions taken on this, any public comments submitted, anything on there. Okay. And right now, what's interesting is the legal counsel for Public Utility Commission is saying that they give full unanimous support to the purchase of the Texas New Mexico grid by Blackstone. But then immediately after that, they pull the hearing. And it's because of public input, public opposition, public attention that they were anticipating to come onto this. The call to action has been a success so far, but we do have to stay diligent and stay on it. But it's also concerning that their legal counsel is saying, no, it's fine. Go ahead.
Do you have any idea how many people hit them up to get this stopped?
So I got a call this morning. Last I heard, it was about 265 is what it was
Okay.
at that people had submitted in the last roughly 48 hours, 24, 48 hours.
And that was directly related to your post and your awareness, correct?
Yes, us getting it out
Okay.
there. It's been out there for weeks, but that was the most submissions we have seen the entire time because we put it out weeks ago too, and it didn't really get much traction. And this was the most it's gotten so far.
So explain this to me. Me, no, seriously, I don't know how this works. We're this was obviously a public thing, but were they trying to hide this? Was this like no notice, not really putting it out anywhere, and just the bare minimum, or how? What
Pretty
what
much anything
transpired
with
before
government.
raising awareness? Say again?
No, they don't really raise awareness. So the only people who know what's going on with the Public Utility Commission are those who watch them diligently. And I mean, we watch them because it's our area to know energy. But we put things out there, and just like I said, we put it out there weeks ago, and it didn't really get much traction even then. And I really think in a lot of cases, when it comes to situations like with BlackRock and Blackstone, I really feel like they're using the MK Ultra style and silencing a lot of what we put out there because the things that should get a lot of traction, like for example, my biggest thing that I got going on right now is you would think this is it, but it's actually the investigation in the Texas Attorney General's office into the national security of our grid with CCP. I've been talking about that on social media for over 6 months, and it seems nobody is interested in the fact that CCP is in our grid. You would think
Well,
they
I'm
would be
interested.
interested in that.
Well, let's talk about it right now. What's going on with that?
Okay, so let's go through the documents. All right. So in a hearing in the Supreme Court in March of this year, there was a hearing by the Select Committee on CCP, and they acknowledged that 90% of battery energy storage systems have at least one critical component from China. And that one
Okay.
critical component
Yep.
comes from Contemporary Amperex Technology Limited, which is a CCP company connected to the highest levels of CCP military, all the way to Xi Jinping, the president. And it's documented in a congressional letter that this is the case that was signed by Senator Rubio and 26 other Congress members. In relation to a battery energy storage system, and as a military man, you're going to appreciate this one, on Lake Lejeune military base, which is where they prepare for theater with Taiwan. And they discovered that China could access, the CCP could access the battery cells on this military base, which is
No
concerning
way.
when you know that China wants to take back Taiwan.
Do you know what the mechanism is for them being able to access that?
It's the battery cell. So the battery cell itself. So if you have the battery cell in it, it operates. You take the battery cell out, it does not operate. It doesn't communicate. It's the battery cell.
How is it communicating? Is this like,
So
is it transmitting something?
first and foremost, you should know that these batteries are 24/7 remotely operated. Period.
Okay.
Additionally, when you put it in, it starts to communicate with temperature and charge status. So it's communicating, period. Well, I
That makes
mean, you
sense.
could say, well, China shouldn't do it, period. But we also know it's documented that China is also communicating in robo vacuums. So what's really the stretch here? And on top of that, because it was found, this company was actually added to the Department of War's national security blacklist for civil military fusion strategies this year in January of 2025. Yet the batteries, over 90% have them. I have evidence of over 7 in Texas alone. And that's what I have proprietary information of. I'm not supposed to have that, but I've been able to collect it throughout various means. And
Okay.
so the what I submitted to the Attorney General's office is proof of a build next to a federal pipeline, mind you, that goes from the coast in Galveston all the way up to Hammond, Indiana. It's over 1,600 miles long. This federal pipeline that does jet fuel, diesel, and sour gas.
Hmm.
And they're building this battery cell right in the middle of it's right in the floodplains for the reservoir for Cedar Creek Lake. Cedar Creek Lake is managed by Tarrant Regional Water District, which is Fort Worth. It's where Fort Worth gets their water, and it's right in the middle of the floodplain for it. So, all of this to say
That's
that it's very
interesting.
dangerous. Hmm?
Oh, I was just saying that's interesting. We just had this conversation the other day. Doc Chambers, I'm on his campaign staff, and we sat down with some experts in the rare earth elements and rare earth minerals and all that stuff field, and we were talking about mine to magnet supply chains and how all that works, and basically the national security aspect of where we're sourcing our stuff from. And you're right on the money. I mean, literally, this individual who is an expert in this field told us that 98% of those rare earth elements are sourced from China. Uh, I was not aware that they had the ability to control them remotely. But when you talk about the temperature and all those other things on there, that makes sense. They would have to have a way to transmit. And then we talk about this green energy. Well, this green energy, even our oil, even the oil refineries, they require these rare earth elements to operate in the batteries. And so we think, just uh, if we just go to oil, then we won't have to rely on China. Well, that's not true. We need to source this stuff in another mechanism and create that mine to magnet supply chain so that we're not reliant on China. And apparently, according to you, so that they're not talking to our systems and controlling our very infrastructure. That's kind of mind blowing to me.
Yeah. So it's 90% of batteries and 70% of solars and over 600 transformers confirmed at
That's
that point.
crazy.
It
So
is, and it's absolutely
CCP,
terrifying.
yeah, I mean the CCP is obviously very deeply intertwined in our power grid. Our national security relies on that power grid. I mean, think about the ramifications if that was taken down for any reason. If they were at a point where they just flipped the switch and shut everything down, and what that would do to us. But then you're also, the first thing we started talking about was the Blackstone and BlackRock aspect of this, buying up our. Does this go beyond? Refresh my memory. Does this go beyond the Texas Mexico power grid? Is
So
this
this
is this
is just
other
the
elements?
purchasing. So for like, okay, to bring it full circle. So the 70 to 90, all those batteries, those are pretty much pushed and funded by BlackRock, which is why the lawsuit is in the Attorney General's office, which started under Blackstone, who is now purchasing the Texas New Mexico grid.
I
Right.
don't know what to say to this. This is a lot to take in because I didn't know this topic before we started talking. In fact, just so the listeners know, I made it very clear that when I bring up this screenshot of this canceled thing, that people are going to freak out when they see the font on there just because it's from your phone, and so I told Nancy, please tell them where to get this from, because that's the kind of stuff we deal with on the internet. But no, this subject in particular, all of this information, I'm not an expert on it. I know that you are, and what you're telling me right now is very alarming. And basically, we've abdicated the wheel. We're in a driverless car at this point, although it's not driverless. Somebody's driving it. Blackwater, not Blackwater, excuse me, BlackRock, um, wrong company. BlackRock, China, and all these various outside elements that are hostile to us. And BlackRock very much is a hostile element to us. They hate our way of life. They've made it very clear through much of what they've said over the last decade or so that they do not want us to own anything.
Well, and let's go a step further for further point of proof. So BlackRock was found to be funneling money from the stock exchange, from our retirement, from Americans' retirement funds. They were funneling it to CCP military. This was reported in 2023. This is the case.
No kidding.
So they're taking our money for retirement and they were funneling it to our enemies. And I want to be clear, one of the biggest things I hear is, well, China's in everything. What are you going to do about it? Well, to be clear, what you were saying there is our enemy is in everything, and you understand that's not a good thing.
Right. Yeah. There's very intentional things going on. In fact, you bring that up. I remember the military's TSP, our version of a 401k, if you will, was also. I don't know if it was in whole managed by BlackRock, but there was a large portion of it, if not in whole, that was managed by BlackRock. So the very thing that a lot of service members rely on for their retirement when they get out, and the investment they make while they're serving, is managed by BlackRock. So all of these elements go right back to the World Economic Forum, which once again has stated very clearly they do not want us to own anything. We've seen the attacks on our food supply. We're currently watching the attacks on our power grid, both through uh, let's just say shadowy means of controlling transmission and all that other stuff on what we currently have in place. But then these licit and overt efforts by what we're seeing right now from Blackstone to buy up at least one of the elements of our power grid here in Texas. And Texas, I remind people, Texas is ground zero for everything else that kicks off in America. So
Uh-huh.
don't get it twisted. You hear a lot of nonsense about Texas says they're red, but they're less red than they think they are. Okay, we're not going to get into all those dialectics. What we're talking about seriously, though, is Texas is and always has been that that idea of freedom, that idea of self-reliance, and it is it is the eighth largest economy in the world, and we are we are, everybody, I'm a Texan. I'm proud to be a Texan and all that stuff. Well, we have that's why they've set off to turn Texas blue. They've dumped hundreds of millions of dollars into Texas and into Texas politics to flip the state. And now we're seeing these other efforts by a hostile enemy nation, CCP, and then of course what you brought up.
Yeah.
Right here in the power grid.
Well, even then, everybody's boasting about how Texas has the largest economic growth, and we do. What they're not acknowledging is we don't have the infrastructure for it. We
No,
don't.
we don't.
And so while we're growing, and I don't care what Abbott says, if you look at the numbers, you look at the money, you follow it. This isn't a mom and pop economic growth. This is big corporation
Oh,
growth.
100%. Right.
And on top of that, we don't have the infrastructure for it. Ever since Uri, we lose over 88 billion gallons of water a year through busted pipelines that still haven't been fixed.
That's the
We
key
have
point
3
right there.
failing
Water.
generators to keep the grid operating that need to be replaced, but the Public Utility Commission told ERCOT, "No, build more batteries instead of replacing the 3 that are failing." And to be clear, the
Wow.
batteries can't generate or create power, so we don't have the infrastructure for the growth that's coming in here. Why would we overgrow something without keeping the people safe with lights and water and food? Because the reality is that if the lights go out, we're back in pre industrial era indefinitely, especially if China's the one that flips that switch.
That's a fact. And that's what I tell people all the time. Abbott might be a great CEO at a Fortune 500 company somewhere, but that's not his position. He's the governor of a state where you're supposed to serve the people. And so if all of your interests are tied up in big corporations coming in, and like you said, we don't have the infrastructure for it, we both know that your middle class Texans are suffering for it. We're watching as all these AI data centers come in and that you have to pump hundreds of millions of gallons of water to cool them and all this other stuff. We don't have the ability to support these massive industrial efforts that are burrowing into Texas right now. So we can talk about how Texas is the 8th largest economy, but it means nothing if the people ultimately starve to death, freeze to death, whatever the case is. But in the meantime, can't even afford to purchase a home because school property taxes are skyrocketing everywhere and everything is falling apart. So yeah, you can only pat yourself on the back for so long and say, look what I've done for my state. When you look at the actual people who live in that state, like once again, Abbott, you'd probably be a great CEO in bringing your shareholders' stock levels up, but you're a terrible governor and you don't serve the people, and people are in bad shape here in Texas because of it. And now, not only have you dumped tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people into the United States from across the border, you kept the border open, you shuffled them all over the place, and you put Texans in danger from Tren de Aragua and Middle East, elements that came in and all these other things. But now you're selling us out to BlackRock, which is basically your alma mater because you have your own page on the World Economic Forum, and we don't have the data to support it. Or I'm sorry, we don't have the water to support all this big corporate growth that's going on. We don't have the energy. We don't have any of it. It's sad to see.
Oh,
This is
yeah.
very alarming, though.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, really, we're working on a few things. So, as far as like, we just got to stay on top of them as far as the purchase, which they pulled it for now. If you'll watch, I'll let you know if they come back and try again. We'll start circulating it again. We're definitely going to stay on top of that for sure. As far as the security concerns around the grid, right now, the biggest thing we have to do with the investigation with the attorney general is we have to be able to clearly articulate that yes, China can access this outside of maintenance and warranty. I already have 2 cybersecurity experts, one of which based in Austin, another one in California, who's he actually ran the EPRI for over 10 years. He's an international cyber expert. They're going to get involved and they're going to provide how, yes, it is possible for them to do this with the actual understanding of it. And then incidentally, Texas actually has the unique laws to open up this for the entire nation. So I had the privilege of working on the security of the grid priority for legislative session. And we one of two, three of the bills that we got across that are relevant to this. So one is it amended the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act, which allows the attorney general to investigate, which is where he's at right now. The moment it is found, the way the law is written is the attorney general is the investigating agency. And the moment it's confirmed, the Department of War will now pick up that national security investigation. And the way the law is written is Senate Bill 75 was passed by Senator Hall. And I know Chambers, and I'm pretty sure you know Hall pretty well. And so Senator Hall passed Senate Bill 75, which then at that time will allow them to open up the entire state for investigation because a vulnerability was found with this company and the fact that it's documented at a congressional level that 90% have this component. And for the record, we have over 1,200 planned in Texas. So it's not just like a couple hundred, it's over 1,000. And so
Okay.
at that point, it'll open up the entire grid for investigation under Senate Bill 75. But incidentally, we also passed House Bill 150, which is in reference to a cybersecurity investigation, and it creates a cybersecurity task force in San Antonio on the military base. So we have the laws to
Is that through the
allow.
NSA?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
So the Department of War, they have a report called Fox in the Hen House. It's a very interesting read if you like to geek out on some good military read. But Department of War has Fox in the Hen House report. It was released October 2024, I think it was. And they actually acknowledge that they have companies that they put on the blacklist and then they don't have any they don't have any parameters to follow through and monitor and investigate at other levels. So Texas can allow them that opportunity because we have the laws available to us and we have the technology and we have the structure to allow the Department of War, the FBI, NSA, NERC, FERC, Department of Energy, we can keep going, to use Texas to lead the way to expose the vulnerabilities of national security in America. We have it. We just got to keep going through the process and pushing that. And that's what we have to do.
Okay. So let me play devil's advocate here and put on my tinfoil hat.
Okay.
Let's say that all of these entities are corrupted and are completely infiltrated by the deep state because they are. But, anyways, let's say that that's the case. How do we as citizens keep the pressure on them to make sure that this stuff does pass through legislation and does get investigated?
We have to keep talking to each other and we have to be united. So, United States was stated for a reason. We stood together as one, and that's what made the change. If it's just me over here yelling and mad about it and else is standing with me, there's no unity. There's no front to defend with. The more people who stand up and say, hold on, like for example, just today, even going and putting in your opposition for Blackstone for the purchase for the Texas New Mexico grid, they pulled it when they know that people are watching them and they know that you are united in what you were saying and fighting together, there are more of us than there are them. And that terrifies them because they're not used to being called out and watched. So the best way to do it is to do it together continuously.
That pretty much sums it up, and that's what I tell people all the time. We've got to come together at local community level, and we've got to be talking. We've got to share that conversation from community to community to community, and make sure, first of all, first and foremost, our neighborhoods are safe, our families are safe. Folks that live within our immediate vicinity are talking to each other and are safe. But then we have to have these conversations at a much bigger level. And
Mhm.
Texans, I need you to take this seriously. Okay. Um, the time for I don't get involved in politics because I don't do all that stuff. I just go to work and I do my job and I love Jesus and blah 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 and all that. That's over. You know what? You've got to get involved. You have to get involved. You have to start taking this seriously. I highly recommend, first of all, like I said, you go follow Nancy at Nancy for thinking, that four number four, thinking on X. But you also get involved and go research these things that she said on this show so that you can get plugged in to what's being done. Okay. We are going to lose our nation overnight, but it won't really have been overnight. It'll have been over the process of years. You just weren't paying attention, and all of a sudden the switch is going to flip and it's going to be gone. You've got to take this seriously, okay? This is no longer like tinfoil hat 2005 Alex Jones, and we're talking about, it- the the frogs changing sexes or whatever. We are talking about some real things that are happening in front of our face, overt, black and white efforts to take everything from us, to make sure that you can never buy a home, that your reliance on power and electricity and even water is in somebody else's hand. So you basically bow down to them if you want to have that ability to survive and feed your family. We already have the CCP operating in all of our infrastructure. And this isn't a new thing, okay? So the mechanism for which this is taking place is unknown to me, and it is known now. But we've known for a long time that the CCP has been building backdoors in our national uh, cyber grid and in our power grid, and making these efforts to insert themselves. This is why we got rid of the cell phone company Xiaomi or Shomi or whatever, however you pronounce it. But there was reasons why we did these things, is because we saw these very aggressive efforts from the CCP to sabotage and jump into our lives and to destroy us from within. They're doing it now. And Texas, once again, is ground zero for this. What else you got?
You're 100% right. I mean, the government documents go back years of evidence of this. And I just want to reiterate once again, China is not an ally to America. China is an ally to Russia.
No,
China
they
is an
are
ally
not.
to Iran. They
Yep.
are not an ally to America. So whenever you think that China is in everything and that's fine, to be clear, it's not. And also, for the record, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard are one of the few investment companies, if not the only ones, allowed to operate both in China and America. They have look at their history. If you don't know BlackRock's history and you don't know what BlackRock is involved in, and the fact that they literally own everything at this point, you don't understand the depth of this. And it's not just the World Economic Forum, it's what the World Economic Forum represents, including the United Nations. You might be mad at Trump because he's causing this conflict with the United Nations, then you're not understanding that that is the World Economic Forum and BlackRock. This climate Paris Accord that we were pulled out of recently, that Trump has pulled us out of twice and Biden put us back in, that is your ESG. Those are your solar, your wind, and batteries that are vulnerable and riddled with this technology from China. Meanwhile, while we're sitting here putting up millions of acres of intermittent, unreliable, not compatible with our physical grid and the physics of it, China is activating 2 new coal plants a week, while we're
Really?
shutting them down.
Wow. Well, yeah, I look at these stupid wind farms all over Texas, and what you used to be able to make a decent argument for, okay, big deal, we're taking wind energy, but you look at these things fail, and the upkeep and the maintenance on them is just astronomical and ridiculous, and really an unsolvable problem. Like, just go up to one, go look at how big these structures are, and when one of them fails, they just stay like that. Nobody's going up there to fix this thing. And so
Mhm.
you have dilapidated wind farms all across Texas, probably all across America. And we know we know the mechanism to do this right, but we bought into this ESG line and this clean energy and all this other nonsense. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to clean energy, but I am opposed to stupid ideas that require just monstrous levels of maintenance and uh, aren't worth aren't worth the bang for the buck. So yeah.
No.
Anyways,
But
um,
they're great tools to fit the United Nations World Economic Forum and the
oh, for
goals
sure.
of those, because 15-minute cities, if you contaminate the land, they'll buy for you for cheap. If you contaminate the water, don't worry, we'll sell you water. And population control. I mean, hydrogen fluoride and carbon monoxide are emitted from these batteries when they go into runaway. Remember, I mentioned that battery cell tells you the temperature. Another thing they could easily do is what's called the Aurora attack that was done in 2006. They could cause that system to cycle and overheat, which turns into a bomb over a
Oh,
15-mile
nice.
impact. which hurts the food, the water, the land, and you lose power.
Yeah. Good grief. Well, I, for one, am thankful that I came across your post. You sent me your post actually. But getting this information out there in the public sphere, getting this out to Texans, you obviously did an awesome thing and got enough people rallied where they couldn't just pass this thing in the dark of the night. They had people that actually reached out and said, knock it off. And so they had to kind of back off for a little bit, which don't get mistaken. Any of you out there, they are reforming, refitting, and they're going to come back at this because BlackRock is not giving up on this. Blackstone, BlackRock, whatever, they're not giving up on this. This is they're going to keep moving their chess pieces around until they make this happen. We've got to take this seriously. Number one way is elect Doc Pete Chambers. That's what I tell people. Like this is going to stop immediately. This guy is well aware of what they're doing, and he's going to break all of this. Beyond that, you've got to get plugged into information, get plugged into Nancy, get plugged into anybody else. If this is what I do on X, if somebody has Texas in their name, or I go into their bio and they have a whole bunch of things about Texas, and I see that they're posting a lot. I don't even care about their follower account. I don't care if my number one focus is, are you somebody who's posting, reposting, and talking about what is going on in Texas on a daily basis? If you are, I want to follow you. And I follow those people. Care less what your follower count is. And that's what we have to do. Social media is our most powerful tool right now. And while we still have a somewhat friendly, I don't say entirely friendly, but a somewhat friendly platform like X, where we can get things done and we don't have to resort to jumping back on Telegram like we did during the Biden administration, then we need to use it. We need to talk. We need to put as much firepower on these problem sets while we can before they completely silence us and shut us down. And that is our number one mission right now. As Texans, as Americans, you name it. There's a lot of outside interests and global aggression coming against the United States right now. And like I said, Texas is ground zero for all of this. So,
I have one more thing
Nancy?
to support what you said.
Yeah, go
Um,
for it.
Speaking of governor, the governor elects, or more specifically, the governor appoints the Public Utility Commission board that is voting on this. That's important.
That is important. I feel like that should be an elected position.
It should be. So should the state of affairs. So who handles our elections? So should the Texas Water Development Board, who handles our water, and the Public Utility Commission, who handles our electricity. And yet all of these positions are appointed, or not state of affairs, state director, yeah. They're all appointed by the governor of Texas. And look at all of those positions right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. We also saw recently, at least I saw in my last podcast, we found out the Secretary of State was charging people $1,500 per FOIA request when they were requesting public records of voter database rolls. So
Did see
there's
that.
there's an effort to suppress and silence and keep things in a shroud of darkness and hide information from Texans. And yeah, they can't legally do that, so they make it painful. What they can do is put large fees on things and shut you down. But I digress. No, this is important. Actually, that's a very important point that I am going to bring up with Doc. And when he is governor, who knows? Maybe we get that changed, because Texans need to have more say in their day-to-day lives and not just hand
Oh,
this
yeah.
stuff off to whatever dictator in charge is putting people on boards deciding the fate of their future. So, no, I will actually write that down after this and make a mental note of that.
Yeah.
But okay. Well, thank you for getting this information out. I am going to get this out as quickly as I can, and Once again, Nancy, the number 4, thinking on X. Go follow her. Go support what she's doing because I know you have been doing a lot of investigative work for, you said 6 months, but I know it's been a lot longer than that. That's 6 months on this one particular subject.
Uh-huh.
You've been working on a lot of things in Texas, and we need more people like you who are exposing and highlighting what's going on because this is a thankless job. I know you're not getting paid for this, and this is the kind of work that citizens should be doing. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Truly, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll be back next time, and hopefully I get the guy on where we're going to talk about more voter irregularity and some actual cyber concerns that are going on in Texas right now. So, talk to you guys next time. All right. See ya.